is race night here on RaceSpotTV, and today we swing back over stateside and we are gonna have a fun night in the Motor City here in the US of A. It's Detroit Belle Isle. We're set to kick off yet another round for the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship. Hello and welcome, one and all, to RaceSpotTV. My name is Nolan Rambo. I have got Lorenzo Bonner beside me in the commentary box with Hugo Louise down behind the cameras for tonight's race. It's round number 5 here on October the 15th. We swing back stateside for the next 3 races. Kicking it off first here in Detroit before we swing over to the Charlotte Motor Speedway at the Roval this time around instead of the Oval. Then wrapping it up with an oval race at the Worldwide Technology Raceway before we swing back overseas to hop across to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. It should be a fun race then tonight. Street circuit racing is one of the most difficult types of racing to get. And with this being the lone street circuit on the season here, Lorenzo, it should be a rather entertaining race, I think it's worth saying, over the course of these 21 laps.
It will be a very entertaining race from start to finish, and it's kind of like what I said at Lionheart a couple of days ago, that it's make it or break it every single corner. There is barely any runoff whatsoever, whatever you go into track. Therefore, the tiniest mistake, and I mean the tiniest mistake, can cost the end of the race just like that.
14 turns is going to hold the 13 drivers that get set to duke it out here in the Motor City tonight. And so far in qualifying, it is Everett Paddock that just went top of the boards with a 1:23.873. His previous lap was good enough for P6 on the boards, but that's going to put him up on pole position. And from John Bodefer, who has been on the front row a good number of times over the last few races.
Yeah, but then again, craving the best lap over here is all about precision and a little bit of luck to avoid hitting the wall, because if you hit the wall, even though it is a 0x, it is enough to disqualify your lap. But anyway, we see 70 Seppa right there going to turn number 3. And turn number 3 is going to be a key point over here in the first 2 laps, because it is so easy to lose the car in braking that the chaos could ensue right there. But after that, you just kind of have to cruise all the way to the back stretch and relax a little bit.
Of course, turn 3 is one of the best passing opportunities on the track, with the second longest straight on the track. The other one is actually that curvy straight right between turns 6 and 7. That is the long straight on the track. You see Severi Seppa ducking through there now. Just turning it in for turn number 7 where we cut in for the fountain section. This is a place where passing could be a premium tonight, and I don't feel we're going to be seeing any overtakes coming through this middle section here. It is all too risky to try to make a run here.
Yeah, because if you try to make a run right here, the problem is that you have little to no room to get off and go side by side and try to get away off a possible contact from wheel to wheel. And the biggest problem is the bumpiness of Detroit, is the infamous bumpiness. I think there isn't a part in this track where you get shallow portions in the track, as Everett Paddock now has the fastest lap of the session so far.
You're seeing John Bodefer go to the top of the boards a few seconds ago. That was immediately beaten out by Lucas Poppo. It was immediately beaten out by Everett Paddock to go back to the point by about 1/4 of a second. So Everett Paddock currently sitting on provisional pole. We ride on board with Brandon Powell ducking it down through turn 7 to get set to dice his way through this fountain section for turns 8, 9, 10. We cut back to the right-hander at turn 11 and make your way around the remaining right-hand corners of the circuit. Of course, turn 10 marks the final left-hand bend on the circuit. There are definitely a lot more rights than there are lefts to the track on this one.
Yeah, there's more right and left-hand turns, but in my opinion, you know what the trickiest turns are? The left-hand ones, because it is the one that has the most bumpiness. It has the most aggressive angle of entry and then carry over the speed through the apex. So it is more possible for you to make the mistakes within those left-hand turns, especially the car might get loose during reacceleration of those left-hand turns, as we're looking on Brandon Powell getting through turn number 3 and 4.
And you talk about the left-handers being a difficult one. I think there's no turn that speaks truer than turn 2. It's a very fast left-hand sweeper. And not only is it one of the bumpiest corners on the track, as you mentioned, it also comes up and over a small crest, making it all too easy for the car to do one of 2 things. Either plow understeer because you're going at too shallow of an angle and you're carrying too much speed, or you simply get loose because the car is bouncing too much and you have too much turning angle on the car. It's one of those tracks where you have to maximize every possible inch of the track that you can. So Brandon Powell on his second qualifying lap. He is currently only 11th fastest and stepping that back end down through yet again another one of those left-handers at turn 8.
Yeah, and the left-hander is no slouch, because what happens? You just get out of a very, very slow right-hand corner, 90-degree right-hand corner-ish, and you just have to throw the car into the left-hand side. And there's a little bit of a kink that unlevels the car if you go into the entry, that you're gonna have to get yourself back on the footing. That steps up the car a little bit. The other chance is the car just drift off and you get some understeer, and that's what happened to Brandon Power right there.
And 30 seconds remaining in qualifying. There is nobody out on track at the moment. Christian Starkow, the only driver to opt not to go for a qualifying time, hasn't even made a run onto the racetrack. So with just a few seconds remaining here in qualifying, the grid is set. So let's take a look now at your official starting grid from today's race at Detroit Belle Isle. It's Everett Paddock on pole position after a close qualifying battle between himself and Lucas Papa to line up beside him on the front row. And don't forget John Bodefer, a multi-time winner this season, looking to go for another one here in round number 5. Frank Newen starts in 4th place. Severy Sepp is down in 5th. Fernando Medina already almost a second back, down in 6th.
Yeah, Martin Arnaud is in 7th place, followed by the Alex Aviano Liedo into P8. Jaden Thurlow and Brandon Powell round out the top 10 in this griddy. Alexander Bichel, Alex May go into row number 6, and the last car in the griddy is Christian Starkov, the only driver that hasn't placed the time in this grid.
So Starkov's got a bit of work to do tonight. You saw just how greatly, the times were varying all the way throughout qualifying. It's 123.4 for the fastest lap, but 126.3 for the last time on the grid. Now, that is about what you'd expect to see if this was a one split, everybody was combined together. This is the top split, though, out of 2. So these are the best drivers in this split, at least, on the surface. And I have a feeling the reason for that is just because of how you have to drive road courses. You really cannot get these close times, because it's one of those tracks. Draft doesn't necessarily matter. There isn't really one line through. It's a multi-line racetrack, and the times can really be reflective of how bold these drivers are willing to take the corners.
Yeah, especially through 1 and 2, you can save like thousands of time, and of course I'm putting that being figurative on the way how I say that, because you can be very aggressive on turn number 2. The problem is you have the outside wall, and it is that thing. It's kind of like the make it or break it corner, because if you make it, you can save nearly half a second to nearly a full second on how you drive the car. After that, it's kind of like good cruising and get your braking points right. So it's a track that is way too based on momentum and a little bit of luck. So lap number 1 will be very frantic once we get the green flag.
And seeing these cars, taking it slow in some of these corners is going to be no surprise. And part of that is because you have such a little runoff to run with. It's a lot more intimidating taking a fast corner when you got a wall on the left-hand side instead of a bit of grass that you can kind of run wide on, especially when at the angle these guys could be hitting these walls. It could be a massive factor into how this race plays out. But pace car is rolling. It's going to pull down to pit road. Very, very short pace lap here, and that's going to leave it up to Everett Paddock, who jumps on the lap pedal. We are underway, and it's TNT Racing to lead them to the green.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a battle for P2 going through the first few turns, nearly 3 wide in there in the third roll rimple, but everybody just got clean. No major incidents so far.
Nothing major thus yet. A move for second. Popo tried the outside line. Bodeford defends going into turn number 3, and they're still double wide, deeper in the field. They managed to hang on to it, though. We still have no contact. Medina tucks in line behind Frank Newen here, trying to get a run, and they are going to finally single file out for the first time all race long, just in behind. So the top 3 are breaking away, but it is still a hornet's nest of cars back to the midfield.
Yeah, Hornet, everybody kind of like following one line into a little bit of a pack racing of sorts, as everybody tried to follow each other. Now they're on the back straight. This is one of the key points of the track. Have your braking zone, you kind of break in the 400-meter board and have to throw the car kind of early and try to avoid the curbing on the entry so you don't offset the car. Now you can see the imbalance you get on the left-hand entry.
Frank Newen had a bit of a bad run through turn 7, got a bit loose, and that has allowed Medina to close in the gap. And you can see that battle rage on just in behind for 4th place back to the field. It is a tight field, and that 5-car checking up the entire group at the moment. Got unsettled through just one corner. That was enough to offset his entire momentum all the way through that fountain section. You see really tempting fate with the walls as Medina tried to go for it in turn 1. I'd be surprised if he did. It's a very dangerous move to have that look at a turn 1. He doesn't opt for it, but he's offline for 1 and for 2. This could open up the door for Jaden Thurlow to make a run.
Yeah, and this is those nerve-wracking moments because you're still trying to build up the tire heat, and the car gets a little bit off as you see Thurlow looking down on the inside, applying some pressure on Medema. Cannot get it, so he has to tuck back into the row and to the file of cars. That is about 6 cars that have the 6 hard pack. Everybody following close to one another. But I honestly thought Thurlow on the last turn actually grazed the wall on the wall.
No damage yet for the number 8 car. You see the suspension, they'll bounce it up and down through the bumps on this very bumpy racetrack here in Detroit. Trying to use the draft to close into Medema, looking for the inside, but cuts back over to the left, right by the wall to get the most amount of speed possible out of turn 7, but the straight's not long enough. Thought about the inside for 8, but there's just no space there to make a pass in any car really, let alone the Indy Pro 2000 here, despite being this narrow.
Yeah, and turn number 8, I know from Indy cars, from driving the IR18s, is not a place to pass at all. So you really cannot afford to go the inside and dive in unless the other driver makes a mistake. And it's still a very risky spot for you to make the overtake, as there's now a little bit of gap separating you and Medema and Thurlow. I think the guy that we should be looking for probably really soon might be 70 Seppa after this little bit of a fumble from Jaden Thurlow into turn number 1.
Small fumble from Thurlow. Seppa closes up the gap, and Seppa's trying to work on holding back Martin Arnoldus a little bit more at the moment. Less time to the car behind than there is up to the car in front, which is not what you want to see. You always want to have a bigger gap to the cars behind you than you do the ones in front. That means you're doing the right thing here. At the moment, Seppa kind of dropping back a small bit, and I want to point out as well, we are still completely clean. Nobody has had any incidents just yet in terms of smacking the wall. And so far, there have not really been any swaps positioned outside of that first lap either.
Yeah, and I think so far we had the cleanest start of a race, or cleanest 3 laps of a race of the entire season in the roadside. Apparently, we had some issues at Rebel Ring. I think one driver got into the pit lane, had to sort out the car. But other than that, everybody doing a really good job on the streets of Belle to keep that car clean, and it's still within contention, because even Starco is like the last car on track. He's 10 seconds back. That's what it takes. If you make a mistake, you can lose that 10 seconds just like that and be thrown all the way down to the back pretty easily.
So Paddock, Bodefer, and Poppel are the current podium drivers, and from there you see this battle for 4th place. It's Newen followed by Medema, and a little is back, followed by Thurlow. John Bodefer is setting yet another fastest lap of the race.
Oh!
Down race leader, and that was a bit of a hit to the wall for Medema.
I think the scariest moment was not just hitting the wall. There could have been some damage, but I think the car just getting upset. You know, the car bounces back because of kinetic force, and you have to keep the car straight. And now you had a little bit of a mistake on the first lap. Yeah.
Down the inside, a very clean overtake there from Medema. That was honestly impressive. It was such a short straight. Got the run, realized might not get that opportunity, made that pass work. So looks like Medema might not have as much damage as we thought. Doesn't seem to be affecting the wall too much. Smack to the wall. Sparks went flying, but Medema kept it held, and now has that position behind Martin Arnoldus, getting into the bit with Alex Civilano Ieto here. Almost made contact in turn 7, but Arnoldus just backed out of the last second. That gives Ieto that position.
And it does show that, again, how based on momentum it is this track, because Newen lost momentum in turn number 3, got into number 4, kind of fumbled it, and because of that fumble, just opened the door for Medema to get closer and made the overtake on the left-hand turn and just get 4th place out of the Canadian driver. Is there damage on the Wentz car? Doesn't look like it. It's just normal loss of places. Paddock fires back to the best lap of the race.
124, 152, the current fast lap of the race set by Everett Paddock this last time by. Right on board with Arnoldas in the sprint down to turn number 3. Closes in with the draft, close enough to have the look, thinking about it, but just can't get a proper run down to the braking zone. Would have to brake way too late to even make the corner, let alone complete an overtake as well. So Arnoldas is going to have to sit behind Sevillano Ieto for the time being. I have a feeling this battle is far from over. It's going to take one mistake from that 11 car, and Arnoldas is going to be right back up into the fray.
Yeah, because I think everybody's within the draft of each other. That makes overtaking so much difficult. It's kind of like what we see of sorts at the Red Bull Ring. The only difference is this is a track that is kind of like one base setup instead of having some other issues. I think Brandon Powell had a little bit of an issue and dropped back one spot to Starkov, as the last place cars now moved up one spot in the grid.
And up front as well, Lucas Popple has lost out significant time back to Medema, so Medemo's car is still not being hammered as much as it might think. Look at this gap. That is 3rd and 4th on the screens. Lucas Popple had a good start to this race, but has just been dropping back ever since, and it looks like Lucas Popple might have some trouble from behind for that 3rd position. Paddock once again fires off a fast lap of the race. The first driver to break into the 123s all race long. This qualifying was a very different story.
Yeah, a little bit of, I'm not surprised at all. The tire gets better over here during the course of the run, especially with this full field car. So it's not surprising to see the cars going at 130, 123 right now on track. It should get lower. I think we might be able to see, depending on circumstances, maybe a 5, maybe near a 4 by the end of the race when the cars get lighter and faster.
He's going to be trying to utilize the draft and trying to push his way up into a 3rd place finish here. Lucas Popple already having to think about going defensive into turn 7, but hangs with it. It's about where they were that last lap by. Lucas Popple was able to pull a little bit ahead in the previous couple of corners. Medema bobbles just slightly, and Lucas Popple maintains 3rd for the time being. But the way Medema's been closing, I can only imagine for how long.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky because Popple is just losing ground and losing time lap after lap after lap. So it's allowing Medema to close in. And Medema is really the only driver between the top 5 that is kind of like matching what Moto4 and Paddock are actually doing. As now Paddock does another fast lap once again. 123.870. Again, I said it. I think we're going to be seeing the 5.4 maybe towards the end of the race because, again, the car gets so much faster and there isn't a lot of grip loss with this tire. So, and it's a tire that doesn't consume a whole lot of tires. So, a track that doesn't consume a whole lot of tires, correction. So, you can make up the ground without too much haste.
That is 3 fastest laps for Paddock back to back to back. He is just getting faster and faster every single lap, and he's looking good to eventually get a race win here. Now breaking out of the traffic range of 1.4 seconds from Bodefer. So it just leaves these midfield battles here that are still looking to heat on up. You've got 8th and 9th between Arnoldas and Ieto that is still looking to heat up, as well as this battle 4th and 3rd between Lucas Popple and Medema. Then you got everybody else kind of running in their own little midfield battles at the moment. Nobody's really too close to make moves. They're just kind of running by their lonesome, trying to just see if they can conserve a bit of time and see if they can make it to the end of the race.
Plus, I think this spot makes it a little bit way more different. Not a little, but way more different than the Indy cars, right? Because the last time that we saw Indy cars drive over here, the biggest difference is not only, of course, horsepower, aerodynamics, and how the car handles it. And I want to see how the new tire model stacks up on this track because I haven't tested it. But it's a track that it would be very interesting as now you waited with the fastest lap of the race, an 8,000 of a second faster than Paddock's best lap. I think the interesting aspect to call about over here is that they have one tire brand only. They don't have primaries or alternates or primer or alternates, so softs or hards. So just having that one make and you have to rely on your driver skills all alone makes this race a little bit more interesting.
You see the battle for 8th and 9th started to pick on up, and this fight got close in the run down to turn number 3. We're talking that 9 car made a move down to the wall with almost no space for himself in the 11 car. couldn't get the run they needed, and as a result, Arnoldus has dropped back in terms of timing here. But Alex Sevillano-Ieto was definitely defending hard, trying to maintain that 8th place, and so far has been able to do just that, keeping it well out and clear of that number 9 car at the moment, as Arnold is still trying to get back into rhythm. Trouble for the 10 car. That's Alexander Bischel, spun around in turn number 7. So problems for Bischel, the first driver to have a full spin on the day. And I'd imagine that'd be all by his lonesome, but he's just lucky he got nobody else collected with him.
Yeah, and he's going to have to Austin Powers around the track as now Medema looking for the move on the outside. That might give him the good room going to turn number 2.
Gets ahead for 2, but Papo's going to have the crossover, but he runs too wide. So Lucas Papo has to sacrifice 3rd place. And Medema, though, looking to go on the defensive here. Papo's close enough to have the lunge, trying to go back into turn 3, trying to pull alongside, but there's no space. And Frank Newen now able to close the gap as a result. Medema, though, up to 3rd. And Frank Newen, he might be able to make a run a bit of 4th place here. Lucas Papo can't get the hammer down and chase back after him.
Yeah, and now a little bit of a fumble for Papo going to the into the high curb and offsets the car a little bit. Nearly now driving up the wall, driving the wall a little bit. Might bring you in closer, but that's the. I'm trying to find the. This is the master move going to turn number 1 and 2 from Medema. Apply pressure on the inside, then you move to the outside where you're gonna get the line into turn number 2. And going for number 1, if you go on the inside, you need a very wide angle to get it properly and carry that speed, and Papo just didn't have any of that. He had to go wide into turn number 2, thus giving Medema the position.
And Medema has been able to just run away with that 3rd place. You already see, look at the gap that he's already built up in just about 2/3 of a lap alone. And Medema is gone with that 3rd place. Lucas Papo at this rate will not be able to chase him down. To be honest, Papo probably would have been able to kind of go back and maybe go for that crossover, but he just ran too wide in turn 2 trying to keep the speed up, and that's what really cost him.
Yeah, that really cost him. By the way, fastest lap of the race for John Bodefour. This is the funny part. If John Bodefour didn't do the fastest lap ever, the paddock would have done the fastest lap of the race with that 0.850. But then again, it's those things of, you know, getting your corners right. And this is one of the tracks that getting your corners right and your braking points and entries and how to power it down quickly and efficiently as possible is key. You cannot make mistakes on any corner whatsoever, especially this braking zone they're about to go towards.
You see that number 6 car still looking to work hard at getting the run here. Here's what happened to Alexander Bischel. This is actually a separate incident coming around turn number 7. Oh, just loops it around again all by himself. And that was Christian Starkow, who's already a lap down himself, that managed to duck his way through. I think Starkow had his own struggles about 1 lap ago. There you see another look at Bischel's earlier spin. It has not been an easy run at all for them.
Yeah, especially that corner, because what happens, there's a little bit of groove shake between all right. It's just that there's a little bit of a groove change going from the entry of the corner to the exit. Your car bottoms out of sorts, especially during the reacceleration. And if you do that, if you put your paddle on the metal way too early, it's an easy spin. You just have to be more of a more conservative accelerator outside of the turn. Otherwise, it's a nearly automatic spin.
So we can see right up there in front, that is Everett Paddock. Losing a bit of time here to John Bodefour. Bodefour has been steadily closing in that gap for the battle for the race lead. Looks like Everett Paddock might have dropped off, might have used all his stuff up early on. There is just about 1 second separating them. So Everett Paddock still has some competition for the race lead in his mirrors that he might have to worry about if Bodefour can get on it. A couple laps ago, it was Bodefour to take that fastest lap of the race away. It seems to be like they can really ebb and flow in terms of this gap of who's fast and where on the track.
Yeah, but then again, it's funny that the gains and losses over here kind of like fluctuates way too much. And now Paddock fires back with the fastest lap of the race. It's kind of like it's offshoots of what happens at the real life IndyCar, right? One driver does the fastest lap, and you think, oh, he's gonna get him, but the other driver uses a push to pass to try to get a faster lap and try to mitigate the difference that the other driver has cost them. So if Bodefor really wants to make an overtake, he's running out of time. He has about 10 laps or so.
Trouble for the number 11 car getting into it with Jaden Thurlow. I think Thurlow ran a bit deep in turn 3, and Hiedo just came right back on him and tagged himself, took himself out of the race. Look at the number 11 car coming on near. There you see Thurlow was already deep and just pushed wide into him on corner exit of 3.
Yeah, but a good 360 though.
That kept it going, didn't lose too much time, so that's the good news. That being said, it's not good news at all for him, and there you see another view of the head. Just, yeah, how's that? I don't even think those wheels never stop spinning. That car was always moving.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm trying to find a good 360 spinner lately in racing, but I cannot find one on the top of my head. As that was a good comeback. I think if you have a time loss for Leto right there, you might be around maybe a second or 2 seconds total.
That was all because Jaden Thurlow just locked it up going into turn 3. Kept it out of the wall, thank goodness. And I don't think there's too much damage on any of the cars. They'll be able to get back into this without too much of a fuss. So that is the good news. You can see Frank Newen still trying to work his way up to the 4th place driver of Lucas Poppel. Now Poppel started, he kind of started up here in the top 5, started up in 2nd place on that front row, lost that 2nd though really early in this race. Then lost 3rd a little bit later to Amadema, who's still been able to build a bit of a gap. He's trying to hang on to 4th place right now from Frank Newen.
And Newen actually gaining some good, trying to gain some good consistent ground, but the last few laps weren't that bad for the Canadian driver. Fluctuating around the 124 mid-lows as Poppel kind of with a really good bounce back. His mid-lows here, Nolan, have been about a tenth or a 2 faster than the Canadian driver. So the German fighting back and keeping Medema very honest right there.
You can see Lucas Poppel's lap so far from lap 3 onwards in this race, and you can see his lap times have been steadily getting further and further quicker on the times, which is always what you want to see. Lap 9, as you can see, very much did not go his way, a second slower than the lap prior, but ever since then, he has been slowly reeling his time closer and closer to those 124s. He's doing a good job to try to hang on to this one. You know who's also doing a good job to try to close in a gap? John Bodefor for the race lead. Another fastest lap with a 123.5. And look at that gap now, just under 3/4 of a second up to Everett Paddock. Paddock's got to start to be looking a little bit nervous as Bodefor is clearly running down. And at this rate, he's going to catch him by the time they get back around to the checkered flag on this one.
Yeah, there's a good possibility, but then again, I think Bodefor might need another fast lap or so, or 2, to get within really on the back wing of Paddock right here, because the problem is we've seen this kind of a battle. Bodefor getting about 7/10 of a second, 8/10 of a second, but never within 6 or half a second of Paddock right there, even though Paddock has some internet problems. Connection problems, but managed to stabilize right now. So Bodefor needs again now to do a full push and avoid the walls to get closer to that number 3 and contend for the race.
I've been kind of comparing lap times between these two drivers so far on my notes here, and for the most part, Bodefor has consistently been about 2 to 3 tenths quicker on the last couple of laps so far than Everett Paddock has been. So I think overall, Bodefor has the pace. Paddock pulls ahead in a couple sections on the track, but overall, Bodefor is still faster. And just to drive the point home, a 123.740 for Everett Paddock as Paddock steps the back end out, while Bodefor sets another fastest lap of 123.5. That's another 2 tenths gain, and that'll close in big time. As you saw the slide from Paddock, somehow he held on to it though.
And held on to it to the second portion of turn number 3, now going to 4. Finally, the gap has been very close to be between 2 drivers, below the half a second. Now, Bodefor has a lot of time, and basically the entire world for him to attack. Is just when does that number 1 car will make the move, and where does he make the move, and how hard Paddock drives, because again, it's not the hardest track to defend right here.
Deep on the brakes into the fountain section. John Bodefor not close enough yet. Turn it in through turn number 8, bouncing up and over the curbs. Martin Arnoldus, you can see, now out of the race car in the number 9 machine. So Arnoldus having some interesting issues for himself as he finds himself now out of the car. I believe he just brought that one to a stop all by his lonesome, so it's an interesting situation for Arnoldus there, but you can still see this battle for the race lead is what we're going to focus up on now. Under a half a second for the first time really all race long since the first couple of laps. And John Bodefer, he's got Everett Paddock easily in his sights here.
Yeah, easily. I'm just going to take a look on the last lap for Paddock. 124.2, and that grind is going to cost him quite a lot right now.
It's going to be enough to allow John Bodefer to go for the race lead. Here's the defense from Paddock, though. Oh! Both drivers off. Paddock slides into the runoff area. Gap taken out by John Bodefer coming down to the braking zone. And that is a huge question here. Should Bodefer have backed out, or was the defense from Paddock too aggressive?
Let's take a look at the replay. You can see Paddock going to the inside line of Bodefer, but Bodefer kind of like migrates into Paddock's line and takes out the TNT Racing driver. And I am 100% sure that Paddock's not going to be satisfied by that, because he gave him quite a little bit of a room. But what impresses me the most, and this is a little bit of a joke, how the car is lit off into the tire barrier and fit off perfectly sideways.
Soon as that car had both wheels leave the ground, there was no stopping it. That thing was gone. You can watch this here. There's the look from Bodefer. Look back to the inside. He faked for the outside, then went back low, and there you can see Bodefer just got set off and took out the front wing of the first tire barrier, then pancaked the second one with the entire left side. So Paddock is definitely out of this race for sure. And that, I think, is not the way that John Bodefer wanted to take that win. But again, it's debatable as to who you could necessarily point the finger at, because on the one hand, was the defense aggressive from Paddock once Bodefer got to his inside? Absolutely. That being said, though, Bodefer did look back for the outside line, then jinked back inside in the last second. So, I don't know.
It's like you pinch in the driver, you try to take as much of the line as possible out of him, but you can still see there's a little bit of the room on the inside line of Bodefer to make the turn. He would have to 90-degree wing it 90-degree into the corner, as Paddock would get the cleaner exit. But then again, it's like you're battling for tenths of a second and things like that. It's racing, you're racing hard side by side against one another. The question now becomes, does he have damage considerable enough to make them close out the car and eventually get a position out of the Alpine Geodesic driver? But doesn't look like it.
I was going to say, I mean, he hasn't really lost. He's lost a couple of tenths, yes, but a couple of tenths over a 7.5 second gap, that's not nearly enough for him to be able to run down at just 5 laps. John Bodefer has no competition. He's just got to nurse that car home, and he'll come away with an easy victory after that one.
Yeah, it's going to be easy, but I think it's going to be a bitter win for Bodefer, who's going to be back tomorrow, if I recall correctly, on the IVRA 8 hours of Red Bull Ring, so with the Alpine Geodesic team. So it's going to be a very interesting driver that I say drives clean, drives hard, is fast, usually picks up the pace towards the latter portion of the race. But then again, it's hard racing. It's open wheel. You cannot go wheel touching on open wheel racing. It's usually dead.
So you're right on board with Frank Newen now. Missing the apex a little bit for turn 3. He's still trying to run down Lucas Popple for what will be a guaranteed podium position now. Because of all of this, Amadema, Lucas Popple, who at one point battled for 3rd and 4th, this now 2nd and 3rd, and Amadema has continued to pull away. Frank Newen has been steadily trying to reel in Lucas Popple. Look at how much he flirts with the left-hand side of the wall.
Yeah, and now Newen try to get on the back wing of Popple, but the last lap only 0.25 of a second faster than Popple right there. He needs at least maybe 0.2 of a second faster on the lap to get within the half a second to 0.4 of a second, and then apply some consistent pressure on the number 6 driver, the number 6 driver, and then try to make the move. But Popple doing a really good job over here of keeping that number 6 car out of bank.
He still has 3 more laps to negotiate, though, and here at Detroit, that is still a lot of corners that you can mess up on. and allow Frank Newen to easily reel in a couple of tenths gap that is currently separated these two drivers. Frank Newen, look at that, really tightening it up for turn 2, trying to get as big of a run as possible, and it's a huge run in the run down towards turn number 3. Look at how much it closes up on Lucas Papo there. I don't think Papo's going to be able to keep him at bay if he can keep up the runs like that one.
Yeah, because now gap it goes under 3/10 of a second, nearly under the 2/10 of a second. But the problem is it's going through the turn, right? Those 90-degree turns of 3 and 4, that where Papo is gaining some ground a little bit. Now the gap goes back up to 4/10 of a second, nearly half a second between both drivers. But Newen is on a hard charge and has about 3.5 laps to make it work, and he can make that work as something happened to Thurlow.
We take a look at what happened further back here to Jaden Thurlow. Number 8 car coming on up towards turn number 3, and he's been having a couple of lockups into here the last 5-6 laps or so. Takes too much curb and just keeps it out of the tire barriers. Great save from the 8 car to keep that one out of the wall. But Newen with a good save as well, as you saw him have a huge tank slapper coming around turn 11.
Yeah, and that is a little bit of a breather for Papo, because now the gap kind of doubles up to 0.8 of a second and resets the Canadian driver to drive it fast all over again and try to contend for the place of Papo with 2 laps to go.
Still amazed at what a wild finish in this race this ended up being. We came into this race thinking it might be, a bit out there, a bit more on the lackluster side, but it has been extremely intense so far. And here's the battle for 6th place. Thurlow has managed to catch up to Ieto now, and is going to be having a huge lunge trying to go around the outside line of turn 3. Still has that run. He might be there for 4. He's going to take the wise movement back out. So 2 laps to go, and the battle still raging on. He got that one for 4th and 3rd, which started to split apart, but this is where it's all at right now for 6th and 7th.
Yeah, no, and I liked what I saw for Thurlow right there, especially going to turn number 4. Don't contend for the spot. Just stay patient. Drive the draft on the back straight. I can see Thurlow making that move on the inside, and he's going to do it.
Side by side, but Thurlow backs out for the inside line. Look out for Ieto sliding wide. Thurlow gains so much time through the apex of turn 7, but he's managed to keep with it. Got to be careful with that throttle, though. You saw Thurlow's back end twitch. He's wanting to get the hammer down a bit more aggressively, trying to get the runs. We've talked about this before with how bumpy this track is, especially how there's a lot of dips and crests right around the apexes on these corners where you get on the power. It's one of the things you do not want to risk your fate at this track.
Especially considering that I think a good portion of the tracks are nearly 90-degree turns. It looks like the track was built by Herman Tilke, but unfortunately it isn't. And the track is really good for this kind of racing as we go into the final lap. Bodefour with a lengthy margin, but this is where it's at, as Thurlow might not get the run that he wants going to turn number 3.
He's not going to have it into turn 3, but there's still time to make that look at a 7. If he can just hang with him here, he's got to close up a little bit more, though, through the center of these corners where he's not going to be able to have enough time. We're going to chase him down into the wall. Goes Jaden Thurlow. He's held with it, though. Might just be able to pull ahead in that gap. If he can just get the run into turn 7, he could still have him here. He's got the draft. It's going to be a long drafting run down the longest straightaway for the final time here at Detroit. Thurlow, does he look for the inside? He makes the look, but he's just not close enough, so he can't do anything about it. But for John Bodefour, coming around to the final corner, the number 1 car takes a victory here at Detroit Belle Isle, but you still got the battle for 6th to be settled.
And look at Thurlow right there, trying to go for the over and under. He's not going to get a good run out of it, and the car doesn't get on the power way too early like he wanted to. Final 2 corners for Ledo right there, nearly goes into the wall into the second to last turn. Now Thurlow hits the wall in the last turn. Is going to be 7th place, and Ledo with an amazing defense is going to close out in 6th place.
Both drivers hitting the wall in the final couple of corners, but it is going to be Alex Civalano Ieto to fend off Jaden Thurlow, beating all odds in that fight to take a well-earned 6th place finish. And John Bodefour is going to be your official race winner on the night, but whether a couple of drivers are pleased about how he got that win, well, it's a bit of a 50-50 on that factor. So let's take a look at the official post-race results now from Detroit. John Bodefer taking victory here from Detroit. Amadema going to be in second place. Lucas Papa to round out the podium with Frank Newen in fourth. Severi Seppa finishes out the top 5. Alex Sevillano Ieta, we saw in the fierce fight with Jaden Thurlow on the final lap of the race. Half a second separate them. 4th, 6th, and 7th with Alex May, Alexander Bischel, Christian Starkow to round out the top 10 on the field. And that leaves Brandon Powell, Everett Paddock, Martin Arnoldus to finish it out 11th, 12th, and 13th. Paddock should have finished higher. Instead, he finishes second to last, crashing out with 6 laps to go.
And it just shows that how a race can go like from glory to disaster in just like that, in the blink of an eye, and nothing that the drivers can do. Racing hard, but then again, it's Belle Isle. Belle Isle provided this kind of a very dangerous and attrition-like racing, but Bodefer got away in the end, and we are looking at the calendar now. They switch it up from Belle Isle to Charlotte Roval, and I have to say, if we're looking for similar style races here in Nolan, I think we got a race that kind of matches with what they're going to see in about a week time.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you have the Charlotte Roval, which is arguably one of the better Rovals that you can find out there. There's a, the typical trend where people don't typically like the Rovals. I think the Charlotte Roval is an exception to that one with the Daytona road course. It's one of the couple of good ones that you can find out there. We already went to Charlotte once as well at the start of October. That was, of course, for the Oval, though. So it's back to road course racing at America's home for motorsports. There's another Oval race coming on up, though, for the Oval Racing fanatics at the Worldwide Technology Raceway to round out our American racing here in this second stint in the month of October.
And that Worldwide Technology Raceway, we covered it last season. So we saw that provided a really good racing, especially during the latter portions, where we had a little bit of a drama. But I really am interested to see with this new Grid S-like grid, how they're going to tackle the one nearly a mile oval of the Illinois track.
So it's going to be an exciting couple of races coming on up as we get set to go back to North Carolina at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Should be a very entertaining race race coming on up at the Charlotte Roval. But for now, here from the Detroit Belle Isle, I have been Nola Rempel with Lorenzo Sabato beside me in the commentary box. Hugo Luis down behind the cameras for tonight's race. Thank you for joining us on RaceSpotTV for round number 5 of the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship presented by Cooper Tires. We will see you all next week at Charlotte.